Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of Houston Rockets LinkedIn Live. I am Craig Ackerman, TV and radio voice for the Houston Rockets. This week, our guest is Darren Rovell. He is a sports business analyst and a senior executive producer of the Action Network, also previously with CNBC and ESPN. Darren, how are you? Welcome.
Craig, how are you? It's good to join you. Just a little bit of warning. If a kid comes in here, I'm going to just say I'm doing something, but that's kind of the new normal. 3 kids running around.
No worries, no worries. Been there, done that. My kids are older now, so I don't necessarily have to worry about that. But no issues whatsoever. Also want to let everybody know that we are simulcasting on Facebook and YouTube, so welcome to those of you who are watching on those platforms. And for those of you who might want to become part of the show today, feel free to ask some questions or comments in the comment section, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can as we move along. So, Darren, as we've been doing these, sort of the initial first question is your background. I know you're from New York, you went to Northwestern, but what steered you in this direction, this career path of yours?
I like to tell people that I, as a child, realized I wasn't going to be a professional athlete faster than you did. And, so when I was 8 or 9 years old, I realized, I loved playing sports, but I wasn't going to be a pro. And I like to think that that was an advantage in some way. By 11, I was making like a baseball magazine that I was selling for $1 in middle school. And, so that started me on a career in journalism. I also did a ton of theater and musical theater, which led me to Northwestern, being able to do theater stuff and being able to do journalism, having a Big Ten athletics. They had just come off the Rose Bowl. If they won that Rose Bowl, my parents joked that I wouldn't have gotten in. But yeah, as I, was a college student, I started, for the young kids out there, there's a thing called a newspaper, and there was a publication, there still is, called USA Today. You might have heard of it. And in order to get to the sports section, which was the C section, which is the red section, you had to get to it was the business section first, the money section, the green section. And I kind of just read through that. And instead of skipping it, I thought that business was kind of interesting. I didn't want to toil in the small markets of Sherman, Texas, or somewhere like my guy Dave Revson started out in. And I just thought that business as a niche was a good idea, that athletes, for the most part, don't really love to talk to you, but everyone's trying to talk to them. And business people, no one's talking to them. And it was fascinating. I would say that, if you look at the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates were born in the same year, 1958, which enabled them the first year that they were in college. That was the first year that a computer was in the library. I was kind of born in a year that enabled me to think about covering the business of sports. And at that same time, it was getting more demanding for fans to kind of want to know about the business of sports. Somewhere in 92, 93, ESPN, every time someone was signed, they would start saying on SportsCenter, well, here's his contract. Before then, they just didn't feel like it was necessary. And then I think what happened was you had 24-hour sports radio. So fans had a chance to engage and all of a sudden get on the air. They wanted to impress their friends. They wanted to impress their friends at the water cooler. Then came kind of the concrete beat where new stadiums were being built at the same time, somewhere between 95 and 2000. And so when I was coming out of school, I had for 2 years a sports business radio show where I kind of tested out this concept, and it was incredible. I didn't really tell anyone I was a student. And, when Ray Rhodes was fired as the head coach of the Packers and they were talking about, well, is this about a black man in Green Bay? I had Jesse Jackson. I remember leaving class to have Jesse Jackson on the show. So I felt like if I could get this niche, and it was a small enough niche that no one was doing it nationally, but was a large enough niche that it would grow, then I would be set. And I was able to convince ESPN out of school, give me a shot to do this. And rest is history.
And during those days, because I remember, so I've been working with the Rockets. I started as an intern in 1994, and the complexities of sports, especially on the professional side, and heck, even on the collegiate side, since that point, have exploded. When I first started working, including the coaches, let's exclude the players, but including the coaches, I think there might have only been 15 or 20 people that worked in the entire organization. Now it's hundreds. And so you did kind of come around at the time where everything was exploding, the business of sports, all of that. So congratulations on your unbelievable timing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so obviously there's some luck to it, but yeah, if you're a fan and you can't understand base year compensation or how a trade actually works, you you're not a great fan anymore. And so, it's amazing to see. I think the fan over the last 20 years has become so much smarter. And I'd like to think that I've played a little bit into that, although some people undoubtedly do not like me because I inject business into their sports life, which they try to get a total escape out of.
So, okay, let me ask you about that. You have a significant social media following, and at times, correct me if I'm wrong, you've been a little bit of a lightning rod. How do you handle all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I handle it first by I've kind of always had a hard head going in, so I think maybe that's important. I'm genuine, I'm authentic. I know what I believe in. See, if you're just doing something or saying something just to stoke the fire or just to have a debate, I think that's where you're really in trouble these days. There are guys that are doing it just to, they like to see their name trending nationally on Twitter. I believe in things that I talk about, and yes, I'm not scared to say things. So one, I come in with an attitude that, I believe in what I say, and what you say doesn't really matter that much to me. But it also comes with the attitude that I feel like the worst place you could be right now is kind of in the middle. You want people to either love you or hate you. You want people to feel passionate about you, even if it is hate. And I think there are haters out there that still respect you and know kind of what your brand is. So I would say, as people are building their brand, if they're students or younger people listening, I think the number one thing, you always hear this in marketing with athletes, I think the number one thing is authenticity. And if you're true to yourself, that means that you're not going to have people who are going to affect you because you believe in what you say. And if you believe in what you say from the minute they come out of your mouth, the words come out of your mouth, then it's an easier time. But I battle every day on Twitter, and I'm not going away.
So Twitter I always say Twitter is simultaneously the best place on earth and the worst place on earth.
Well, by nature, it's out of context, Craig. I mean, you're coming in, you're coming out, you're saying few words. It is set up to be both a positive, a quick way in, and sometimes I think where I've messed up in the past is I've just put the wrong thing on Twitter. It's a larger conversation that can't be talked about in a small amount of letters, and that's where sometimes it goes wrong.
Would you say your authenticity is what has made you successful?
I mean, I think it's certainly a factor. I think that one of the things that's made me successful is what I stand for, what my brand is. Early on in Twitter, I got into Twitter because as a business reporter, I had to tell the secondary part of the story, and the first part of the story was available fastest by Twitter. And so it wasn't really about a dissemination tool. And then over time, obviously, there was value in me being able to use Twitter, especially as I went from ESPN to CNBC, and people lost me potentially, and then kind of back to ESPN. But I would say people know what I stand for. People know what I'm branded as, and I've kind of used that for Twitter, noticing that, hey, I can't cover everything. You know what I stand for. You know what I want, and if you send me something that's kind of cool, like a $150 parking sign or things that I've put up before, I'll credit you. So I'll be the conduit. And I think that's one of the things that's been part of my success. So I think also it's been, on social media, on Twitter, I believed in it in the early going, and I devoted a lot of time into it. And I think a lot of people dismissed it in the beginning. People always said, "Why, if you devote so much time, how are you so confident that it's the next big thing?" And I said, I'm not that confident it's the next big thing. It's the thing right now. And if there's another big thing that comes down the pipeline, I'll be into that.
Darren Rovell is our guest, Houston Rockets LinkedIn Live. By the way, next week we have a special Thursday edition. And to tease this, Marv Albert, the voice of the NBA, will be our guest. But right now, Darren, you're with the Action Network. Yes, and it counts. You're with the Action Network. So sports betting is your wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. And sports betting has exploded in this country. It's becoming more and more not only acceptable by individuals, but by both local, state, and federal governments. Leagues are starting to embrace sports betting. So where is it now, and where do you think it's going?
We're in 21 states have legalized it. I think about 14 right now are operational. I think that there's going to be special parts of the legislature of certain states that are going to have a additional session to provide more revenue for what they've had to do because of COVID-19. So I think we'll probably have 25 states by the end of the year legalized. It's a game changer. Part of the thing that I had to do when I left ESPN for the Action Network is I wanted to find a place that did not take bets, that wouldn't be able to compromise me from my journalistic integrity and the standards that I have. But at the same time would be kind of an amazing data source, of Bloomberg for sports betting, and we make you a better. And some of the things that we have going are incredible. I look forward to more of the things. We've seen the Washington Wizards through their deal kind of do an alternate betting broadcast. I think the next iteration of rights fees at the end of 2023 with the NBA, certainly with the NFL, it's now finally time for an Amazon or a Apple specializing in one-click and micropayments. And you can imagine that it's not an alternate feed, that gambling is part of what is on the screen. And the data that's available and the way things shift right now, live betting is about 8% of all betting in America, but it's 75% of Europe. To be able to do live betting and see how that changes the game and actually getting good at it and finding out how to be good at it. I mean, it's something else. It's a lot of tension. You're like a day trader when you're sitting down and trying to do live betting. But I think it's one of those things that's going to rebound faster than most because people are bored. Maybe if they're not spending money on tickets, they want to get close to their team. They want to feel that cortisol, that hormone running through their body, and betting certainly does that. Here in New Jersey, it's crazy. I mean,
at its core, I'm sorry, go ahead.
In New Jersey, it's just insane. I mean, I have 21 mobile options to bet at, and $4.5 billion was bet in 2019 compared to 5.3 billion in Vegas. It's amazing how fast the state that I just happen to live in has kind of boomed into the sports gambling world, and it gives me an advantage to see kind of the future because of the way that the states are rolling out.
At its core, it's about engagement and revenue generation. So it seems like it is a very smart position for leagues and teams to get in, because it does promote engagement and revenue generation. And even under normal circumstances these days, sports leagues and sports teams are always trying to get creative to find ways to gain additional revenue. It just seems like this is an easy place to go.
I mean, there are some fine lines that will happen. Say, for example, and I brought this up with Adam Silver, the official sports book of the NBA is MGM. They were the first of the leagues to announce it. And what happens if you go to MGM and you say, hey, they're the official sports book, and A fan bet on the Rockets, and at the last minute there's a goaltending situation where you had the Rockets, to win straight up, and there was a goaltending, and the Rockets lose by 1, and then the next day Adam Silver comes out with his 2-minute report and says, yeah, that was a bad call by the refs. And you're like, well, wait a second. Like, okay, I went to the official sports book of the league, and you just told me that the Rockets basically shouldn't have lost, but they lose anyway, right? So, but to me, it seems like you're undoing what I just lost. So there are some complexities with the league taking money from this, and at the same time, and teams, and at the same time, as the integrity is, hey, we got to keep the integrity of the game. So there are some challenges, but I expect, the leagues to get through all of this.
You mentioned the upcoming TV rights. Are we currently in a bubble? I don't think we're in a bubble from network rights, but perhaps maybe in a bit of a bubble with local RSN rights. So is this a way to sort of bridge that gap?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bubble in local rights in every sport, and the reason why is because if you were to take the a la carte model, and you would say only these people are watching and only these people are paying, the rights fees on the local would be, significant. I mean, halved, down by 50, 60, 70%. And now that people are going through the a la carte model and are doing their YouTubes and their Netflix, and just their league passes or whatever, it allows you to look at the local model and say, well, they're doing it totally different. And if you make it commensurate to the people who are actually watching as if they would pay for that, it's the dollars are much higher than they should be. That's been a concern for many years, especially in baseball.
And the younger generation too. I mean, basically anybody 25 years and under, they consume their media far different than anybody 25 years and older. They want it on demand. They want it in their hands. I've argued that ultimately where sports television is going is similar to Twitch. Because again, for somebody in our age bracket, you're a little bit younger than I am, but not by much. We're not used to having our screens full of information and nuggets, but again, those kids who are 25 years and under, this is what they've grown up on, and so for me, I've always argued that the future of sports television will resemble Twitch, where you can flip on different camera angles. You have an option for betting, or you have an option for alternative announcing, and so on and so forth. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we've said for all time is that people are always going to watch live sports. And then these kids came along and they're like, well, all I care about is I get the highlight of what just happened to my friend first. As long as I get credit for saying, oh, check this out, this just happened in the Rockets game, even though I didn't see it in the Rockets game, I get the credit. It's all about getting the credit or reposting or saying something first, even if you don't watch. And I think that kind of screwed people up a little bit, because for so long we've been saying it all matters about live sports. Sports is always going to be live, and that's all we care about. And I think it's changed now. And so, yes, the how dynamic of a broadcast of lives that are that the youngsters have, I think that's going to change how things look. And certainly, if it's not how it looks right now, you'll have to provide them with alternatives that look like their life looks now. You can't say, let's wait until that 13-year-old gets to 20. You have to provide the alternatives now so that you speak their language.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Darren Rovell is our guest this week on Houston Rockets LinkedIn Live. Reminder, if you want to add some comments, we'll get to some of those questions. In fact, we're going to start to get to some of those right now. Elizabeth asked, how easy is it to get the business information that you share?
That's the secret sauce, Elizabeth. No, it's all about your sources, and it's all about knowing what people want. I always say that my job is twofold. It's to do the job that I need to do from a journalistic perspective, where I need to report on what I should be reporting on as far as the business of betting and the business of sports. And then two is reporting on what I think people want to hear. People might realize that my Twitter feed has been filled with a lot more sports memorabilia stuff over the last couple weeks, last couple months, and a lot of that has to do with the heat of the marketplace. To see the rise of whether it's Jordan collectibles because of the Last Dance, or whatever, people collecting memorabilia, buying more because they're sitting in their house. So I would say my job is to do the journalism and to do what I think people want. But every day I wake up thinking someone's going to steal my job. And July 5th is 20 years being a sports business reporter. And I always like to think about that every day. I always like to say I have to be the best. I have to have the best sources. And the day I don't care is the day I should leave. And every day I like that fight. I like that challenge, building more sources. The lists that I have, this is just like on an average day, we got a full list, and try to cross off. I have crossed off more than one thing, by the way, but I just haven't gotten to it. But it's just, it's, I love it, but it's also, I think if people say I want your job and people spend one day with me, I would say 99% would be out.
How do you develop those sources? How important is relationship building to what you do every day?
Everything. I mean, I've done it over time, becoming friends with people, calling them when I don't. It's just being a reporter. Being a good reporter is not only calling people when you want information, but it's also reaching out when you're in a certain city. You make sure you stop by and say hello. It's really more about being a people person, which I am, than kind of, getting information. You'll get the information that will come. But I think, you just get close to people. Now, here's the challenge. You get close to people, and then sometimes you have to write or do something that they're not going to be too happy about. Do
you let them know about that? Do you touch upon that with them
ahead
of time?
I think they understand and respect me. That's what makes them scared of me sometimes. That's what makes them respect me. I'm going to say some bold stuff sometimes. I've had a good relationship with Under Armour's Kevin Plank, and then one day I have to say publicly on Twitter, I think, it looks like it's time for you to go. You have to be able to say that. With Nike, I have a great relationship. And then you got to say, hey, I'm going to do a documentary on you guys. I need to talk to Phil Knight about the past of child labor. And he's never really admitted on camera that he felt like that was wrong. I want to talk to him. And we want to go to Vietnam, and we want to look at the factories. And, you need to push. You need to push. And there's been situations where I've had lifelong friendships with people where things have been burned. I always think that I am fair, but I have to do my job. And I can't allow that relationship building that I've done over time to negatively affect the reporter that I am. Now, I will say this. There are deals to be made. Sometimes you find out something, you're going to report it, and you sometimes have to make a deal and say, okay, I won't report this. And it's got to be good. Like if it's something that's like critical, you can't make that deal. So you have to know when you make that deal, and if you're going to get something down the road. Often I hear, hey, I find out about something. Oh, we're reporting that Monday and it's Friday. Can you hold? And then you have to determine, yeah, if I'll hold if someone's not going to find out about it, or I'll hold if I don't think, like, if I'm going to lose it, how important is it? So this is the stuff that you learn over a career about how to do this type of stuff.
Andrew asks, what is the strangest story you've ever reported on?
I've had a lot of strange stories. I remember there was a story about Luis Gonzalez spitting out gum, and someone sold his gum for $10,000. Um, I
Was
remember.
that when he was with the Diamondbacks
Yes.
or the? Okay.
Yeah, that was before, yeah. And then there was a story. The strangest story. One of the strangest stories was actually a um, Rafael Palmeiro story, where he did an endorsement deal with Viagra. And I called his agent, Fernie Kusa, and I said, Fernie, so does that mean he has the problem? And he said no. And I'm like, on the record. I was like, no. So he's endorsing recreational use of Viagra. And he said, I don't know, but he doesn't have the problem. And then I reported it, and an hour later, his deal with Viagra was done. So
Ooh.
there's been a whole bunch of those, but those are two that come to mind. With both with a Texas. Well, if you say that Gonzalez started with the Astros, both with a Texas twist.
We do everything bigger here in Texas. What do you think about what Spencer Dinwiddie is trying to do with his contract? It seems like for the last year, 2 years, he's been trying to angle on using his contract as an investment vehicle. There's the whole Bitcoin thing. I don't even know if that's still going on right now. What are your thoughts on the creativity?
I mean, that was his original idea, the whole funding thing. I'm all for creativity. I don't think it really works. I do enjoy his shoes, that he decided that instead of having a shoe deal, he thought it was cooler to, get a custom shoe every day, and it didn't matter what brand it was. And that I think is really cool. To realize that obviously when you step on the court, there are people that are taking pictures of shoes. By the way, that didn't really happen I think taking pictures of shoes didn't really take off probably until 2006 or 7, I would say. I mean, that's like a big thing now. Like, oh, what shoes is he wearing? And I think it's because Nike and a couple other brands expanded their player exclusives and did a whole lot more. But I love how he takes advantage of the fact that he knows people are taking pictures of him.
No, I definitely an E for effort. There's no question about that. The league squashed the whole initial situation with the using his contract as an investment, but certainly creative. So you enjoy hats?
I have some hats.
You got a lot of hats behind you.
I like some hats. I have a lot of hats here, which I've been able to get some use out of. Normally, when you're going to work, you're not wearing some hats. I got some collectibles. I got my Shaq shoe here, Hall of Fame signed, size 22. I got a whole bunch of things that I collect. I got Northwestern mini helmets, the top 50 players signed mini helmets. Love shoes. Yeah, I'm always kind of doing something.
Where do you? Let me try to rephrase this. Our sports, they're in trouble, obviously right now, because fans in the stands, doesn't look like that's going to happen for the foreseeable future. So that's a sunk cost. How much panic do you think that there is in the sports world, dealing with the coronavirus, and again, not having that opportunity to generate revenue with people in buildings and potential travel issues and so on and so forth? How would you characterize the panic level from both colleges and on professional leagues?
Before we went on, Adam Silver was addressing the media in a teleconference, and he said, "This isn't business as usual. This is just what we're doing in the now." And I would say, yeah, like it's a lot of uncertainty. And the answer certainly isn't, well, these guys aren't going to die from it. Well, I mean, think about coaches, think about support staff, and then what do you do? So we already have the plan of what you do when someone tests positive, but What happens if someone dies? What's that plan? And how do you rationalize it? And do you still play? There's a lot of talk about just everywhere. The sports is just a microcosm of this economy. You must move on versus staying in your house and not getting it. And sitting here in New Jersey, where in this area, I had for the up until probably April 30th, there were more deaths in my county than the whole state of Texas. I've lived the life of sitting in the house, kind of thing. And so I think it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be a fluid situation. And we'll have to see. I don't really think fans in the stands are going to happen anywhere for 2020. I'm not sure what the NFL is doing in their boldness, whether they're trying to give us some hope. I don't know where the Kentucky Derby is coming from, saying on September 5th they'll have, at least 20,000 fans. It's like every day is its own week now. Saying what you're going to do now is kind of pointless for even July 26th. It doesn't seem to make any sense. So I think there's just so much uncertainty, and when you can't plan and you have the size of the business that all these sports leagues have, it's very difficult. But I think they can plan with obviously the NBA and the bubble, but I think most sporting events can plan with kind of no fans. I'm not sure how the NFL is thinking of, just talking about the first 6 or 8 rows. I mean, to me, that sounds, maybe it's from where I am and where I sit and what's gone on in my community. It doesn't seem possible.
But there is a fine line, right, between that and, again, the business of each league. Big reason why they're playing is because of TV revenues. They need those revenues to keep going.
Sure. And that's the fine line. Like, is sports essential? And people say, well, yeah, it's essential because for our mental health, we have to move on with life, or we have to take necessary risks. The funny thing is, taking necessary risks, that's been redefined this year. And so, people yelling and shouting all day on Twitter as to what is a necessary risk and whether you could be yourself and have your own rights and still respect this world. I mean, and we're living in a pretty complex society right now.
Yeah, very, very much. All right, Darren, we're going to end on this. You've kind of touched upon this a little bit as we've gone along. But what advice would you give to younger people who want to get into this industry?
I would say the key is just to be yourself. Go into an area that you think there's need that is tied to revenue, right? I mean, me going to sports betting had something to do with it being tied to revenue. Now's a time where, as a young person, you'll probably have to work for free, work for some place or some business or some team that you've been interested in, show your interest and figure out something, kick down the door and figure out something that they're not noticing or that they could be better at. I always tell people that so many people want to work in sports and they all want to work for free. So, hey, I'll work in sports, please. I want to work in sports. In order to actually make money in it, you have to be good at it. And I think that means that you have to have a certain take. You have to kind of brand yourself, what you stand for, and try not to follow. Don't be the guy who just wants to go into analytics. Build a new statistic that is relevant that no one's thought of. So I think obviously there's going to be fewer jobs now for a while, and that kind of just makes it a little bit more important to be yourself, come up with something that is kind of like me, like a niche of some sort of business, but is practical and will grow. That's my advice.
One follow-up on that. Do you think that the sports industry is oversaturated right now or just evolving?
I don't think it's oversaturated. I think it's going to shrink a little bit by virtue of revenues kind of going down and fans not immediately being in the stands. I think where people should focus is sports teams are now companies. You said the difference since you came in 1994 and what it is now.
Huge difference.
Part
Huge.
part of it is because, the Rockets are a brand beyond the basketball team. And so I would say also to suggest to people, if you're a fan of a team, to think about all the tentacles that are going on, whether it's esports, whether it's building land around an arena, whether it's other things in branding that make teams companies. You don't have to just be Craig Ackerman, or you don't have to be doing the essential parts of the game. You can do a whole lot of other things for the team that you love, and I think those jobs outside of the brand will continue to expand.
All right, Darren. With that, we'll call it a day.
Screaming?
Fascinating conversation. Yeah, I'm sure the kids are involved in some form or fashion.
Awful.
It's okay. Hey, again, been there, done that. Loved them when they were little. Loved them when they're big. But certainly understand the challenges with parenting. But we appreciate the time. Thank you so much. All of the best and continued success to you and your career. And please stay safe and healthy.
Thanks for having me. Good luck, Craig.
All right, Darren Rovell, our guest here on Houston Rockets LinkedIn Live. We appreciate all of you watching and tuning in. And again, reminder, next week, special Thursday edition, Marv Albert, the voice of the NBA, will join us. Thanks for watching. Bye, everybody.